We're joined now by syndicated columnist Cal Thomas, author of a new book called What Works? Common Sense Solutions for a Stronger America.
Imagine that.
And I got to tell you, great cover on this book. It's Cal with a groundhog over his shoulder, and the subtitle of the book has, It's Groundhog Day in Washington. You say we just do the same things over and over and over.
Just like Bill Murray in the movie wakes up every morning, the same music on the radio, the same conversations, meets the same people. This is bipartisan, guys. I mean, Washington, the same sound bites all the time. They get on TV. You're ruining America. No, you're ruining America. Well, you're a commie. Well, you're a fascist. Well, you're a secular humanist. Well, you're a Bible-thumping bigot. And the host says, and we'll be back with more civil discussion after these messages. It's like wrestling. You guys were talking about wrestling earlier on the show. It's fake. It's phony. And this book is about how to get out of it. We need another Grace Commission. You may be old enough to remember the J. Peter Grace Commission during the Reagan administration. They did an audit from top to bottom of the federal government, found out what wasn't working, what was wasteful, fraud, and abuse, and recommended to get rid of it. Well, of course, when they presented the 50-pound book to Congress, they completely ignored it.
Everybody went right to sleep.
Right, but this time we need something with teeth, like the BRAC Commission, the Base Realignment and Closing Commission, where Congress actually gave them the power to shut down outmoded bases around the country, and the congressman could say, we didn't have any control over it, they did it, so don't blame us.
Well, you know, Cal, I have such a fondness for you, but I am one of these people who really sort of raises a skeptical eyebrow
Yes.
anytime you start talking about a blue ribbon panel.
No.
Oh, what we need is a blue ribbon panel, because we, the elected officials, can't solve the problems that we were hired to solve.
Right.
So we got to find somebody else to come in and tell us what to do.
Right.
And largely, you're right, those blue ribbon panels, the report falls, everybody goes, yeah, that was interesting, thanks.
Door stoppers.
And that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and that's why the public needs to rise up on this. You know, there's, as you and I both know, we've been in this town a long time, Congress sees the light only when they feel the heat. And we got to make them feel the heat. This is our money. This is our, you know, when the Democrats say about Republicans in power, we're mortgaging the future for our children and grandchildren. Yes, we are. And we're not going to have the kind of country that our parents and grandparents handed down to us unless we get our fiscal house in order. $17 trillion in debt, most of it borrowed from China. Last I checked, they weren't friendly toward us.
His book is What Works. It's out now, in fact, and Cal Thomas is live in studio. In fact, if you've always wanted to talk to Cal Thomas and ask him a question, take this opportunity, 888-630-9625. He's sitting back with us for this whole half hour. And, Cal, I haven't been in this town that long, only about a year and a half, but for me to sit here in the same room with you...
It is thrilling, isn't it?
It really is. No, because I feel like I've watched you for so long. And one of the things that, I come from the entertainment industry originally, and you have such a look at your book, the Groundhog Day references, the allusions. You always bring culture into the conversation, and you draw, you use good analogies within Hollywood films, and you understand that that's how people think and talk. That's what's important to people.
Absolutely. That's the way people communicate these days. I started out, I wanted to be in showbiz, and now the news has become showbiz, so my life has come full circle. But my wife and I met in the theater, a musical comedy here in Washington, a little theater down in Georgetown, and that's where I did The Music Man. I was in the chorus, and an old Sigmund Romberg musical called Blue Moon, and all these old
Did you dress
musicals.
like one of the Mounties? Is
No,
that
but
one
I
of
did
those?
have tights, and there is a picture somewhere, so I can't run for president.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, because you do focus on the culture in Hollywood a lot, I was just reading your latest column, and I think listen, you think, Cal Thomas, you've got good ideas about government, you always talk about religion and faith, it's a big part of your life, and Hollywood, so and you sort of brought it all together in this column about the film Noah. Share with us your opinion of this, because it really came under a lot of heat this week.
Well, I'm always happy when Hollywood wakes up to biblical, conservative, cultural values, even when they twist it. I mean, look, it's a film, it's entertainment. There have been some other great films. You know, there was a large gap between the Charlton Heston, Ten Commandments, The Robe, and some of these other classical biblical films of the 50s and more modern times. And Hollywood is finally starting to wake up. You had that hugely successful series by Mark Burnett and Roma Downey on the Bible on set record ratings. I mean, this is flyover territory. You know, Hollywood and New York the closest spiritual things they get are out of a bottle or in a needle, right? But the rest of the country is going to church or synagogue or whatever, and they worship an authority higher than the state.
So when those good people who go to church and go to synagogue and temple, when they object to some of the dramatic licenses that Hollywood took with Noah, you say, come on.
No, I say, look, let's keep the conversation going. I'm always prefer the original cast. So if you have somebody rather than the road show, it's always better. But if you have somebody who say, well, what about that Noah guy? So well, I go back and read the original the content. There's not a whole lot in Genesis. You get the
I know.
You get the animals, you get the weather report with a flood, you get the ark, you get the dove. That's about it.
Yeah,
So
it's sort of a slim novel. Yeah.
So Hollywood, they've got to fool around with it, and it's just entertainment. I like Russell Crowe anyway, and I hear I haven't seen it yet, but I hear the special effects are pretty cool.
So you don't have any issue at all?
Well, look, the guy's an atheist. He made the movie. It's sort of like, I guess, having a Klansman do a biopic on Martin Luther King. It's just probably going to have some errors in it, little twisting to fit a preordained point of view. But look, I'd say bring it all in here. Let's have a discussion about it. I think that Hollywood is waking up to some of these themes is a good thing. Do they always get it right? No, but at least they're starting to get it. There's money in it. They're not doing it for religious reasons. They're doing it for box office reasons. And Noah made, I think, $43 million the first weekend. That'll get their attention.
Yeah, that does get people's attention. Let me just say, I know that we're talking about faith here, and I know your faith is so deeply important to you. It does sort of inform you on everything that you do. And let me just say that when I came to this town, you were one of the nicest people to me in my early days here. You were one of those people who reached out to a young guy in town, and you talked about things about your faith. I was invited many times to go down to the prayer breakfast as your guest, and so I just want to say that was deeply appreciated. But it really, everything in your life is informed by your faith.
Well, I think you mentioned the prayer breakfast. My wife and I host this media dinner the night before, and in 2008, Mickey Rooney was one of our speakers.
Oh, really?
And he was amazing. He really was. He brought his own introductory video, which was narrated by Elizabeth Taylor.
Wow!
And it was like a 2-minute intro of clips from his career. Andy Hardy with Judy Garland, the Busby Berkeley musicals, all those fences tilting over in the big dance number.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. And he gets up and talks about his faith and how God had changed his life. But yeah, I think there are certain boundaries in life. The Constitution gave us boundaries for government. The founders understood human nature as well as the preachers of their day. The lust for power would be corrupting, so they put these boundaries in place. The Bible gives us boundaries, moral boundaries. We cross those, we get in trouble. So that's what I try to point people back to, and it seems to be working pretty well for those who embrace it.
As you look at Washington, you know what works and you know what doesn't work. What's not working right now?
Well, we have over 40 literacy programs in the federal government. 40. There are 3 Head Start programs. USA Today wrote an editorial last month and said Head Start, although it sounds good, is mediocre at best. These are the things that are not working. They're overlapping. They're duplicative. Look at the State Department, $6 billion they can't find. You were talking about that earlier. Yeah,
right.
This is emblematic of the problem. They're spending our money, not their money. If they were spending their money, they would be far more responsible. So, Reagan used to have this great line, the only proof of eternal life in Washington is a government program. Yeah. It's true. It's easier to kill a vampire than it is a government program.
Well, you brought up 2 issues there, literacy and Head Start, and it takes me to school choice, another one of your more recent columns. School choice, whenever it's employed anywhere around the country, seems to work, and the parents love it, so why can't we institute this across the board?
One word, unions, and their contributions to the politicians. Larry, look, choice works in everything. You've got UPS, you got FedEx, you got the post office, you got all kinds of choice. You got restaurants, all kinds of choices out there, and by having choices, you improve the quality of the products that are and services that are being sold. But this is the last monopoly in America, the public education system. And what is especially outstanding or unsettling, we'll all remember George Wallace, the former governor of Alabama, who stood in the schoolhouse door in the 60s to keep African Americans out. Well, now certain liberal politicians are standing in the schoolhouse door, forcing them to stay in failed schools. Minorities who are supposed to be their main constituency and who vote for them, the Democrats, in overwhelming numbers. They are robbing these kids of a bright future.
And isn't this an issue that conservatives conservatives can take up and actually get some. Do you think, or is it just too late at this point to actually get some of those African American votes, because they can say, listen, we want your kids to have the best education, and this is the way to do it?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's too late or not, but I think it's the right thing to do. And, it's an amazing thing. If you do the right thing, eventually the people will come around to you. I mean, I think it is absolutely immoral to leave these poor children, mostly minorities, in these failing schools while politicians send their kids to private schools.
That's right.
You've got people in this town, they got their kids in St. Albans, they got them in what's the one out on River Road in Bethesda, all these great private schools, and they live in the district, and they ought to be sending their children and grandchildren to the public schools that they're defending all the time, but they don't.
All right, so we had a conversation here earlier today about Obamacare and how the Republicans had put in a technical fix that helps small businesses, and a lot of debate in that about you said sometimes you do the right thing. Was that the right thing to do? Because a lot of people say if you fix Obamacare, it makes it more palatable and it will never change. You'll never be able to change it. And the Republicans who were supportive of this said, well, you know what? We have to wait till 2017 before we can really get rid of Obamacare, and the businesses need help now. So where do you come down on something like that?
Well, first of all, I spent a lot of time in the UK. We have property in Northern Ireland, and I've seen the NHS up close. The National Health Service in Britain was 65 years old last year. Even Prime Minister David Cameron now is going for reforms and allowing more and more private doctors. It's not working. The horror stories over there are unbelievable. There's one guy last time I was over there a few months ago who waited 8 hours inside the ambulance to get into the hospital because there was no room and insufficient number of doctors. You have long waits to see your GP, you have longer waits to see a specialist, and you still have longer waits to actually get the procedure if the government will pay for it. In increasing numbers, they're not, because it's too expensive.